You have to tell us your favorite Nokia game.
I'm going to go for the Snake, as everybody knows. Snake.
I spent days playing Snake.
Have you done it through? Was it successful? Can you actually finish it?
No, I don't believe you can. No,
yes, you can. You finish it by fulfilling all the pixels.
This is the 9th episode of the HEADHUNTED podcast with Vesa-Pekka Kirsi, or how he's called in his company, Vesku. Vesku is a senior vice president of Alma Markets, which is a part of Alma Media Corporation, a public Finnish company. Elon Musk, who, by the way, yesterday surpassed Jeff Bezos and became the richest man in the world, once said, "No matter how hard you work, someone else is gonna work harder." And the founder of KFC, Colonel Sanders, once said, "I'm against retiring. The thing that keeps a man alive is having something to do." About hard work, about not retiring, about what keeps man alive, and about other things, we'll talk with somebody very close to me and to my co-host. Vesku, as we call him, is a senior vice president at Alma Markets, the part of Alma Media Company that owns LMC, Monster Czech, Profesia in Slovakia, Monster in Finland, CV Online, Môj posol, and so on. He has assumed the job of Alma Markets Senior VP in September 2019, and we did not manage to have any time with him to interview him until now. Welcome on board, Vesku. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Michal. Good to be here.
As my co-host, I'm especially delighted to welcome Ervín Dombrovský from our daughter company, LMC. Ervín is the head of analytics, and he's the best of the best to talk about recruiting and the job industry. I personally very much admire Ervín's work. Ervín, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Guys, let's hit it off sharply. Disclaimer to everybody, Vesku is my boss. But he's also the manager and boss of LMC's general manager Milan Jasný, who is manager of Ervín, Profesia's GM Ivana Molnárova, and so on. Vesku was in Nokia games before, in Fonecta, a Finnish company, and in September he has joined Alma. Vesku, come 2019, where you are when you first got approached with the opportunity to join your current position. Where are you? Are you where we're looking right now at the lake, or what was happening at that time? Walk us through that.
And 2019, you mean, when I was casted for the job?
Yes.
I was actually having a garden leave from my previous work. I completed my work at Fonecta. Fonecta was a Finnish phone book company that turned to digital marketing company, and I was working there around 8 years, turning that company around from the paper-based company onto a digital marketing. And that work was complete from my part, and I took a few months of a garden leave to think what happens next. Mm-hmm. At this period, looking for the next step, whatever that might be, the opportunity within Alma Media also become one of the opportunities.
But, okay, so people are always interested where you are actually. You know, when I was interviewing a president of Slovakia, asking when did you come with the idea of being a president, and he told me a shower. I'm interested where you were, what was happening at that time. You know, when does somebody like you receive a phone call, or, you know, when does the contact happen? And how?
I have to say, Michal, I don't even remember. This was a company that contacted me, a headhunter that I had been discussing with them maybe 2 years prior of another alternative, an opportunity, which then didn't that much interest me. But they contacted me. I am pretty certain I was driving in a car, but I might be imagining that. But I think that it was, and this consultant gave me a call. I knew him before I knew who he was, but I had his contact in my phone. So, okay, I knew that this could be something interesting. I better pick up the phone. And so it was. But there it started. It was a good discussion to begin with. Am I interested? Of course I'm interested. It sounds something that could suit me. So let's meet up and discuss more. But that's how it started, with a phone call.
And what was the first thoughts about the opportunity? What was your initial, thoughts about what you can do in this position, what you can achieve?
Well, the first call, at least with me, is always a little bit of a secretive thing. They ask me, so how, what is the situation, Vesa-Pekka? Are you interested in new positions? And then you say, yes, what do you have in mind? Then comes a short description. Well, I have this public company looking for such and such, and I'd like to tell you more. So let's meet up. And that's when you truly actually get into what is at the table. Obviously, as a Finn, everyone knows Alma Media, so it's easy to then, once you hear the company, it's easy to put yourself in a frame of reference. Okay, fine, we are speaking of one of the two big media companies, Finland, both of them being public. And then within the Alma Media, you have three businesses, and now we are speaking of one of those businesses and needs a leader. And there you have your frame of reference, and then you immediately say, okay, fine, great company, great sounding position. Of course, I'm interested. And then we dived into what is actually meant to be leading Alma Markets, one of the three units within Alma Media, and what is Alma Markets all about.
So when you receive the phone call, right, and you hang up, what's the first thing you do? Like, people do some crazy stuff. They stop the car, they think about it, they call their parents, they call their partners, they call their children. Like, what is it that Vesku does when he receives an opportunity call? Putting you on a spot, huh?
Yeah. I was thinking, what do I do? It's an interesting, over these years, you tend to get these phone calls every once in a while. Every single time, you cannot avoid the feeling of some kind of a happiness or some kind of a satisfaction that someone actually thought of you to be, sufficient enough for a given role. So in that sense, the first sensation is always, at least with me, a kind of a satisfaction and a positive feeling. And then, of course, you start thinking, well, what does it contain? Depending on the role, am I up to it? And then come out all kinds of other feelings and emotions like doubts. Can I do this? Or is that for me? Or, is that perfect for my next step? Or even in the case you are already employed, would I leave behind what I have now building? Is the current one better than the upcoming? And always new is interesting, exciting. There's no problems in the new. In your present, you have all your current problems. And you think, well, will that be an easier life for me? But at this age, you already know there's no easier life anywhere. It's just the problems you kind of choose to deal with. But for me, going back to your question, it's just molded in my head for a while. And then my first people to speak with that is always my wife. When I get home or I meet her the next time, it's okay, I got a call from a headhunter, it was this and this, and I exchange some ideas or thoughts.
And what did she tell you about the opportunity? Was she interested? Was she curious about that? Was she supporting you in this next step?
Yeah, as always, she did, and she does. She comes from a totally different field of industry than I do. She's a psychotherapist, and her business is totally different to mine. So when I speak about digital services and this and that, she's always interested in, but she says, well, I don't share that knowledge. So I can't judge whether that opportunity is anything interesting career-wise. But if you're excited about it, then it might be. So go for it. Now, I usually get from her the kind of the mental support rather than the contextual support.
It's a favorite question that we have on this podcast. Does either for wives or partners in general, does your wife have a veto power? Can she veto your decision? Does she?
Well, she and
had she?
We've been together for 32 years, something like that. So we basically grew together from being very, very young age. So we've built our lives together. So obviously has a veto, yes, of course. But at the same time, she's never used that veto in any of my career choices. Rather, she's actually, always supported me in these steps that I make. She's never been too excited about me being a lot away from home. So if the work requires a lot of traveling and long hours, that's never a great thing for her. And yet she's always been supportive in these roles.
Walk us, please, now a little bit about the timeline, because it's always interesting to see, from the inception of the call, from the start of the call, how long does it take for a very senior person to land such job? to actually start the job in September?
If I remember correctly, I was first contacted in early May.
Mm-hmm.
Early May, and that's when the initial meeting with the consultant, the headhunter, happened. The next step was that you met basically the CEO of the company and the HR director, and with them I met twice, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Then back with the consultant. Then you have all the tests, and you have, depending if you kind of get to the final round of the candidates, then come the rigorous testing and the psychology tests and whatever. And this whole process, several meetings, the testing and so forth, and then obviously final negotiation of the deal and all that lasted basically the 2 months. Mm-hmm. Finland usually goes into a total standoff when the July comes and everybody goes on a holiday. So the world has to be finished by the end of June, as it has to be finished before Christmas. So this was also crunched so that we were basically done by the July. So it was basically these 2 months, and it was pretty actually a rapid process, as my predecessor was moving on to a pension, and the company wanted also to announce then a successor pretty early. So basically we were done by that time, and the starting time of 1st of September was actually dictated by my agreement with my previous company, and hence I could have started already earlier, but that was a contractual thing.
Did something surprise you during the process, or it was just a business as usual as you know it from before?
I guess in my age, and having moved position several times, this is pretty standard procedures. Yeah, it has the job interview, I guess, has stayed pretty much the same with the testing, throughout the last few decades.
And was the Alma Media specific about something in terms of the process of your engagement?
I don't see them being very peculiar, different from any others. Of course, the questions were Alma Media specific. They were looking for a certain kind of background. They were looking for a certain kind of perhaps a skill set or orientation. This is an international job. As Michal, you started, there's multiple companies in multiple countries. You need to be able to travel. You need to be able to communicate, at least in the English, and so forth, and obviously have an international business background. So all of those played a key role, and to add with the idea of digital services. So my background with mobile and digital services was obviously one thing that they scanned very thoroughly. But I think in all, it's just trying in any way possible to evaluate whether the candidate is suitable for the challenges ahead.
So now we know what Alma was looking for, right? You just named all of the criteria, not all, but a couple of the criteria. What were the main decision points, the top 3 or 2, it doesn't matter, for you that you've actually said yes and joined the company?
Well, it was not easy for me to make the decision. I am 51, at the moment. It's these when you leave one job and you take up the next, it's always an opportunity. It's always an opportunity to think, well, shall I continue on this path? This is a great moment for me to do something else. And if something else, what will that be? I had the opportunity of being on a garden leave for 6 months, and I truly took that time to think, well, is this the time for me to step out of the corporate life and go into consultancy or go into entrepreneurships, to do something startup, do something, or just go, start being a yoga teacher. I don't do yoga, but anyways, do something totally else. And again, great opportunity to do these kind of considerations. And Alma offered me a great corporate opportunity, to continue the line of work that I have been doing, but again, in a bigger scale and in a bigger responsibility. And in the end of the day, when I weighed the options, and I did have a few options, and some of them were quite exciting as well on the startup front or the consultancy front, I kind of came to the conclusion that the challenges in this job are still perhaps the best fit to what I know already. It offers a lot of learning opportunity, but I can also utilize a lot of in my background. So perhaps I can be the most successful in the end of the day in this role than in some of the other roles that I had on table.
One of the funniest moments I recall with you when we were on a call with all of the GMs in March 2020. And you looked back in 2019 and you said, well, I've been promised a flourishing business. And with great percentages in terms of year over year. And there you are in March, and you're facing things that nobody talked about at the interview in 2019.
Yeah, I think many of us in the business, can share that feeling. But yes, in my case, being relatively new to the organization, starting in September, taking over a growth operation, which has been greatly growing over the years. And our expectations for the growth continued. Some of the growth had slowed down because of the market situation in some of the countries, but we still expected the growth to continue. And then to find yourself, amidst a global pandemic that hit us all in February, and February was still a great month, but March, it was clear that this is going to change our year. And in March, we were all totally unaware. Is this going to be a catastrophic year or semi-catastrophic, or what will it be? And we even did our own scenarios that changed from being, only a slight hit into it being a chaotic hit. It was kind of a bizarre moment that saying, well, I think I came to lead a growth business, and now I'm actually fighting to not a survival mode, but fighting how do we actually keep the business, floating well, knowing that recruiting is a big part of what Alma Markets does. And recruitment, especially in the times of economic crisis, is the one that the companies very often stop the first. That would mean also potentially a serious hit for our business. Well, luckily, the year did end up a lot better than it started.
Yeah, but recruiting is hit hard by the pandemic, but digital services as a whole are heavily on the rise. So everything is possible right now. We just need to do something new. And how you see this chance, this opportunity, this kind of new field emerging from the crisis?
Well, I think, to be honest, guys, I think recruiting becomes one of the most interesting digital services now for the future. I mean, this year, with all changes in it, people learning to become remote work becoming, taking giant leaps, technology taking giant leaps. It may well be that this has transformed the recruiting business, highly. And I'm expecting that this business will be quite an exciting thing in the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of things will happen. So yeah, we may just, I think COVID, and it's hard to call COVID-19 a blessing. I think I shouldn't do that. But at least it was a change agent, maybe one of the biggest ever possible to recruitment and especially digital recruitment. And I think this will be a strategic for us and for other companies working here, how this will actually change the employment work.
Vesku, looking at the macro level and looking at Alma Media being traded publicly on the Finnish stock market, has the company been pressured for certain performance in Finland, or did the investors kind of waited, or was Alma pressured? Did you have any pressure on your shoulders in terms of the 2020 performance?
Well, when it comes to public companies and then even private companies, you always have a pressures on your shoulders. Owners, be they private or public, expect you to deliver. They've invested their money and they expect return on the investment. So there's never a non-pressure situation. However, obviously, the COVID situation put pressure on myself and my business, as well as on the Alma Media as a whole. We are quite open and honest in our discussion with our investors. We try to be as forefront as possible, and as we know, so even in that year, we also had a lot of those opportunities to speak with our investors and the market and explain where the company is seemingly going. And I was quite happy to see that also the Alma Markets business was able to, after having a very hard second quarter, then to start picking up slow by slow, and actually every single month since we were actually gaining back the market that was taking a hit.
During the crisis, in some companies, in many companies, the focus come back to core business, to keeping the core business as healthy as possible, and the investment in new things are cut, because it's a kind of risk to invest into new things. But other people, including Musk and this kind of gurus, they see it as investment in new things during the crisis is the way ahead. It's the solution. So how do you see this balancing between the core business as we had it and the new things, the investment, the innovations we need to do to move forward?
It's always a balancing act, as you said. And you can always, I think you can only afterwards judge whether this balancing act was right at this time. We in Alma Markets, we did the same. So we obviously were very careful with the cost. We too were looking, how do we manage our people? Do we hire? Do we absolutely need the hire, or should we, just wait and see? We knew that the markets are going to be pretty slow when it comes to recruiting, especially the second quarter. So we were thinking, well, should we do marketing at this time, or should we just suspend the marketing spend and just wait for a while? So yes, we were cautious with the cost, as you should be in this kind of situation. And then you start thinking, and we had this discussion multiple times with the country managers, well, what kind of opportunities does this situation open? Do you see something in your countries that we should grasp quick? Can we develop a technology? One of those technologies that was pretty quickly developed was video interviewing. So can we help our customers who are recruiting actually conduct recruitment interviews over the video platforms? And we included those into our services. And we were also able to do some applications that helped the public or helped the social life in the countries amidst the COVID crisis. So I'm with you that it is a balancing act. However, I think that the long-term changes in the market aren't shown in the first 6 to 12 months. They take a bit longer time. And what's happening and how do you react to those changes is then obviously our challenge to keep eyes open and make the right decisions now, because now is the time to invest, and now is the time to put your money to those things where you see that the market is changing as we've done.
Come with March, and what can you kind of describe? What was the first call from your boss, from Kai, regarding the situation? How did you guys deal with that? Did you meet right away? Did you spend hundreds of hours, not hundreds, but tens of hours on the phone, or what? How does Alma deal with situations like this? What are the stakeholders, and what is the process?
Well, it's quite clear. Kai Telanne, who is the CEO of the whole Alma Media public corporation, he deals with the corporation. So he is concerned of the whole business. He's concerned of the people. He's concerned of the public relations, and he lets us business directors to run the 3 business units that we run. So it was our task, obviously, to make our quick and crisis plan on our own businesses. Those were then discussed with him. Those were discussed together as a management team. And as a management team, we agreed also what actions to take, what actions not to take, what are the actions that we will take if things go even worse than we now see. And luckily, those never happened. But yes, we had crisis plans. We had plans also for the business and status quo, and we implemented those accordingly. It's always in discussion with your boss, obviously, and you agree with those plans. At the same time, there's a tremendous amount of freedom within Alma businesses for us in the business units to do those things that are necessary for the business in question. We have quite different businesses in Alma Media, and there's no one rule that fits all. And there's no one market. They are all different. So you have to consider the consequences. If I just quickly speak about Alma Markets' countries, there's quite different countries and quite different pandemic situations within Finland, the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Croatia. So all of these countries, depending on their own society just responded to the COVID situation differently. For instance, in Croatia, tourism is a huge thing for them. And because of that, Croatia is perhaps hardest hit because of COVID than other markets.
What was it for you as a boss, as a manager of those directors within several countries, differently hit by the COVID situation? We all know that we have high freedom in our decisions. And how is it for you as a manager to cooperate, to put all those people together and to act in cooperation, to act as a one body? Because it's sometimes hard to act as a one body.
Yeah, it is, and at the same time, I think the only kind of structure you can have for a pandemic like that is to have the maximum amount of independency and freedom to act with the local directors and managers. You guys know the local situation. We need to be agile. We need to be quick in responding to the local needs. So there's never an attempt for myself to dictate that these countries would have to do so and so. It was always a question: what's the best for Czech? What's the best for Croatia? What's best for Estonia and so forth? That is what we will do. Obviously, we coordinated. One of the things that we did, we had weekly calls to the country managers to check what the situation. First question was, how is our people doing? How do we protect our people? Luckily, we had in multiple companies, we had already trialed in the first quarter of the year total working from home, and that was then easy for us to implement. That we were so quickly able to go remote work and to check that everything worked remotely. LMC was a great example of that. Everything, all the systems had been tested about a month before we had to go to full remote. That was a bit of a coincidence, but a great coincidence. And I was quite proud of the people in all the countries. Well, these are digital services, so you would expect that we would be great in remote, but it's not that easy. I mean, people still work with people, and you rely on having your colleague next to you, and you're able to just shout over the room and say, let's fix this. And now we are all in remote. So how do you deal with customers and services and deliveries and all of that when no one is in the office? But it worked well, and I think it was great to see that over the first wave of pandemic, our people were safe. The second wave has been a bit harder for us. And it's been harder for many of the countries as well. But the first wave especially, we were safe and healthy. And even in the second wave now, operations have been conducted excellently, even though we have also had some infected personnel.
Now, with really not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, are you having a headache thinking about strategy, long-term strategy and planning?
It's... planning 2020 was obviously great because you were thinking of just a normal 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and you had to
right.
play with your numbers. And as I said, we built 3 scenarios. It was March when we did these 3 scenarios, and then we kept on updating these scenarios as the year progressed. And we were then lucky to see that even our best and highest scenario was actually, it was smaller than what the reality was. So we exceeded all the scenarios in the end of the year, which was great. So how do you do the budgeting for 2021? Mm-hmm. Now we've lived with COVID for 9 months. We know what it is. We know there's been 2 lockdowns of societies. We know what that means. The first lockdown was severe. The second lockdown, not so severe. People are remotely, but still societies work. Will there be a third lockdown? Will there be a third wave? What about the vaccine? When does that come?
Right, right.
So, yeah, planning, doing your business is a challenging thing. Yet at the moment, you just take your best evaluation of the time ahead, and then you go accordingly. I don't lose my night's sleep on these things. I'm a little bit of a, I believe that you do your best you can, and then you just have to adapt to the situation.
Well, let's look back to from planning in 2022 and so on back to 2019. You struck a deal with Alma, you signed the paperwork. What did you do? Did you go out and celebrate when the restaurants were still open? Did you take your family? Did you use your signing bonus for a trip to Barbados?
Well, I did obviously celebrate. I don't run huge parties. This was a family celebration, just with my wife and some of the kids that lived nearby. My kids have already left the house, so we just invited them back home and then just celebrated a little bit. But at the job itself, I was quite excited. It still was a tremendous opportunity for me to come from a private company, a private equity owned company, and now actually take this role in a public company. Not a new thing for me. I've worked with Nokia before, so I have some information of public listed companies, but being this kind of position was new to me in a PLC. And in that sense, I was quite looking forward to it and a little bit nervous as well, as you should be when you take up a new job and you think whether the shoes that were less was left for me to take over are too big, and can I fulfill them?
You mentioned Nokia. You have to tell us your favorite Nokia game on the phone.
Sorry?
Your favorite Nokia game on the phone.
Oh, my favorite. Oh, that's a tough one. That's a very tough one. Yes, I worked for Nokia Games for 5 years in several games positions. And over those years, there was actually hundreds of Java games that we were handling and multiple so-called native games, so real serious games on those Nokia Series 60 smartphones. You may still remember those phones, N-Gage included. And my team were actually developing great games on N-Gage. So I could pick one of those, but I'm sure you guys would not recognize them. It was a short time of the history. So I'm going to go for the Snake, as everybody knows. Snake.
I spent days playing Snake.
Have you done it through? Was it successful? Can you actually finish it?
No, I don't believe you can. No,
yes, you can. You finish it by fulfilling all the pixels. And then finally it actually ends by
eating.
By when you just fulfilled the whole screen, the snake goes like that, and then it's a final pixel, and that's where it ends.
Did you?
Of course. Multiple times. And we even made new generations of Snake. Snake was a great example for us. It was exciting game, as simple as it was. But we made new generations of Snake with the Nokia games. But it was a great company, and a great time with Nokia games. And even though as an operation we were not as successful as we wanted, I think what we did was we created a great games industry for Finland. So many companies who are now great and who do great games in Finland were born due to the Nokia Games effort, and we invested in many of them and gave them great projects that then became world known as well, like the Angry Birds or many others.
That brings us back to present, because sometimes doing the innovations for the market, you go through new paths and you just walk it through for the others as well. And somebody may do it better than you. So what makes the difference? How to be successful from your point of view in this kind of innovations in new paths undiscovered so far?
Wow, that is €1 million question, because that's what is the secret sauce for success in digital business? I don't know if anybody has cracked that. Because depending on the service, depending on the situation, that always differs. I think Apple cracked it for mobile games, and that was basically one uniform technical platform, the device itself, supported with the App Store. And all of a sudden, you had a business environment where you were able to both develop great apps and have them distributed. We couldn't crack that. We had all the elements, in my opinion, in Nokia to do the same, but we just couldn't get the source together. And I think perhaps one of the problems was a just dispersed device space, too many different kinds of devices. But what is a secret source? It's just all these elements coming together at the right time in the right way for the consumers to love it. And that's just when it goes out crazy.
Vesku, probably a lot of Alma people are listening or watching this podcast. What's for you? What's next in Alma? What's your next, let's say, 2 years? I know you're going to be talking about digitalization and stabilization and so on, but
well, what's for me for next year? I consider myself a newcomer. I'm a newcomer to the job industry, recruitment industry. I came from a different part of digital services, but there's a tremendous amount of learning for me to do. And at the same time, I think there's a tremendous amount of work that we have to do in Alma Markets to actually grow with the recruitment market. So I'm totally excited about recruiting and what's happening in the whole job industry, how roles are changing, how talents can actually just cross borders. And talents, not people. Now, what does that mean to our industry? How can digital services make talents actually available, not only in one country, but multiple countries, and so on and so on and so on? There's a lot to do. So I'm not looking around. I'm actually quite happy with where I am at the moment and build Alma Markets and the whole business that we have forward.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Let's focus now on the questions that we always ask at the end, and I always ask them my co-hosts and as well as the guest. And those are, I'm going to start with the first one, the easier one, and I'm going to start with Vesku, with you. If there was a company that you would be offered to lead, you would be, without any limits, existing company in the world, you get a phone call right now from the recruiter or from the headhunter rather, and you would be taking on this company. Which one would it be?
That's a question I have never thought of, but I guess it would be just the company that I think is many ways a great company. It's a Finnish gaming company called Supercell. Mm-hmm. You guys might know that by its games, but Supercell, I know their CEO Ilkka Paananen well from all these years that we worked together, and I think he's a great leader. He's run the company well, and it's quite exciting how they work in cells and how it's organized to make great content for consumers. So that's perhaps one of those companies. If I would been offered an opportunity, I would. Mm-hmm.
And then, Ervín, if you were to do your current job of market analytics and behavior analytics and so on for any company, any industry, which one would you choose? You had the advantage to Vesku having 1 minute.
Yeah, maybe I would move into other field of expertise, because I do it from time to time to move forward from my previous type of work. So maybe it's more about a company, and I would love to discover how people at SpaceX work and run things and think about the stuff and develop all those things they do, because it's game changing for a whole planet, I suppose.
1/3 of so far all of the guests or all of the co-hosts have answered SpaceX. 30%. Right, yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, let's turn the table, Michal. You're not going to get away with
Jesus
that question
Christ.
answering it. So go ahead.
I didn't expect this question. Okay, I'm not. I would probably not a company, but I would really love to lead a significant game changer in nonprofit. So it would be probably Gates Foundations. And alike, helping people and helping the environment and so on. So it would be this area.
Hey, a tremendous amount of work there. So yeah, if you get a choice there, I'll let you go.
The Gates Foundation. We had the podcast with one of the people very close to Bill and Balmer and so on, and even Balmer Group is doing great stuff around helping people. I'm always intrigued by people who try to give back. So that would be my chosen industry or area. Then the second question is, I'm going to start with Ervín to give Vesku some time. If you would leave the earth and you would have 2 thoughts for the future generations that you would like to share with them, something you've learned in your career, in your family life, something that's very, for example, for me, it's integrity and discipline, something that's very close to you, what would you talk about? What would you leave on that small piece of paper for them to read?
Yeah, it's really about values mostly, and it would be keep curiosity about things, to be curious, brave enough to dig into things, but in the meantime, be kind all the time in whatever you do. Kindness is the key to everything. Yeah, in every difficult situation, if you deal with people kindly, it's better than to be everything else. Yeah.
And Vesku?
Well, I think Ervín, you started well. I would sign all those ideas that you said. One of the principles that I had kind of stuck with me all of these years is that people do these things. We read a lot that SpaceX did this, or Alma Media did that, or LMC did something else. That's not true. It's never the company that does these things. It's always the people who do these things. People agree, people negotiate, people sell, people produce. It is us as human beings that work together to achieve something great. And it's then so vital to understand that when you work with people, how do you do that? It's all about us, and it's all about us being able to work together to achieve a common goal. And it's very often the best times that you have in your work life or your private life is that when you share with people that you care, that you have fun working with, and you have fun to achieve something together. So, to me, it would be, rather than choosing the companies that you want to work with, choose the people you want to work with. Choose the people you want to be successful with, and then work hard, love hard, play hard, do those things with a genuine heart with the people that are close to you.
That's, by the way, I seen your LinkedIn statement, and one of them is saying, I employ a right group of minds and work with them to do the very best. I guess if you had to choose between psychology and sociology to study, which one would it be?
Neither. Anthropology.
You have a wife who is your wife is quite involved in these.
Yes, I get a lot of the psychology part already, given by my second half, the best half. But I'm truly into anthropology and history. If I would have a second career, I would be a history and anthropology, a philosophy teacher on the high school. That would be perhaps something I would want to do as a second career choice. But people truly tremendously interest me. Not only the current, but the history and historical areas, and how times and seasons have changed because of philosophers or innovations and other stuff that human beings have been able to do. So that's a very, very, very interesting area.
The last question before we wrap up, and quite tricky question: whom do you own your success to? Who is the person that, if you've written a book, it would be on the second page, thanks to?
Wow, how can you even answer that kind of a question? Success is always a combination of many. Mm-hmm. And if you start to list the people that you're grateful for and you owe your success, you need to, write a long list. You need to write a long list starting from your parents and teachers and people who supported you along the way, coming obviously to close loved ones, my wife, my family, and then the colleagues that I've had over the years, those bosses who believed in me and gave me an opportunity in different situations. And obviously there's some kind of an own effort as well, taking some of the risks that are given to you and trying to make the best of them, and so forth and so forth. So no, I cannot nominate one.
You're not going to get away.
Sorry?
You're not going to get away. The first page has to say...
If I had to pick one person to thank for in my life, it obviously would be my wife, Minna, who has, lived with me for 32 years, supported me, sustained me, even at times of doubts. She said, okay, you can do that, go, you can do it. So I obviously owe to her a lot. She's taken the responsibility of our children and created a great family that it's great to come home to after a long day of work. So yes, she's my support in best possible sense.
Thank you. Ervín, thank you so much for helping me co-host this episode. Thank you. And thank you for the great work you're doing in LMC.
Thanks a lot. And I'm glad to get to know you, Vesku, because it was very interesting for me as well.
Thank you, Ervín. great to talk to you as well.
And Vesku, thanks for accepting the invitation to something that we know you are not too much fond of, which means public presence and public PR. So we very much appreciate having you here. You have great challenges and great opportunities ahead. And thank you for being a great manager. Obviously, I have to say that, Vesku. But you are really, without any hesitation, you're a great manager. So on behalf of all of us reporting to you, thank you for walking us through the decision making in 2019. Always find it interesting how people accept that call and then what they do with the information and how they deal with it.
Thank you for the flattering words, Michal. I hope to be up to the expectations. And most of all, thanks to my teams in all the countries. It has been a challenging year, 2020, but you guys and girls, you fought well. And I'm actually looking forward for this year. It's already started, so it's going to be a great year.
Thank you for all of the supporters, for all of the people who are right now watching us on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so on. You can also find us on theheadhunted.com, on Twitter /theheadhunted, on Facebook /theheadhunted, on LinkedIn and the other media. Thank you so much for the support. You can always write me your feedback on michal@theheadhunted.com. And thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to the next session. Bye. Thank you, guys.